to welcome you. Thanks to MSU Government Affairs, MSU Extension, and the House Business Office and Senate Business Offices for putting on this event with us. As Arnold said, we won't have time for round robin video introductions, but if you could introduce yourself in the chat, that would be helpful, and say which office you are with. And if you want to mention an issue that you're working on or something you're excited about in the panels today, that might enable people with similar interests to connect with you. We really appreciate you being here. IPPSR is also the home of a forum series on state policy issues, a political leadership training program, and we help with the legislative leadership program for those who are newly elected to serve Michigan later this year. So I hope and expect to see many of you again. And I hope that starts next week. This training has been split into two sessions, and we hope that you'll sign up for the second day, which will also be a morning session. That is next Friday, February 11th, and it is going to include the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023, which is set to be released. We have confirmed speakers from the fiscal agencies. We expect to have the budget office. We'll have a presentation by MEDC on new economic development incentives recently enacted. And we'll have a set of professional development breakout sessions on constituent relations and communications, and hear from some departmental liaisons. So we hope you're able to join us next week for the second part of the Legislative Leadership Program staff training. We also have a forum coming up at noon on February 22nd, covering workforce development and hiring. We'll hear from those on the ground involved with hiring and workforce development, as well as some economists talking about the bigger picture in Michigan. We also will have a second session of the Rosenthal Internship Program and Award Ceremony in April as well. We hope that you nominate your interns for that award and that you join us for that session, which also provides some opportunities for career development in Michigan government. And we also will have our Michigan Political Leadership Program annual dinner at the Lansing Center this year, featuring Frank Luntz talking about the upcoming elections. And we'll be celebrating 3 different years of graduating classes for Michigan's political future. That's April 20th at the Lansing Center. You can find out more information about all of that at IPPSR.msu.edu, ipsr.msu.edu. And now to start us off, I would like to reintroduce our Associate Director, Arnold Weinfeld.
Thanks, Matt. And again, welcome everyone. Appreciate you taking time on this Friday to be with us this morning. A little bit different format than we've used in the past. As Matt noted, we are doing morning sessions this Friday and next Friday, so I hope you can join us for both. And much like Matt, I'd like to thank House and Senate leadership for their continued support of this programming. Also, the House and Senate business offices who were part of our planning team and worked vigorously to make sure things got set up here. Our MSU partners, the Office of Government Affairs and MSU Extension, and of course, our IPPSR staff, Cindy, Kyle, and the staff that work behind the scenes to put this together. You'll see a message from Cindy or myself throughout to this morning regarding the evaluation link and where you can get additional resources, including speaker bios and presentations that will be made today. Because of the large number of folks we have, everyone has been muted and no raising of hands. So if you have a question or wish to communicate, use the chat or Q&A box. In the meantime, please continue to use the chat to introduce yourselves and appreciate you being here. So let's get into it right away. Our first session features a discussion of ARP funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding, and some of the proposals that have been put forward. And with us to speak to those is John Lamacchia. John is with the Michigan Municipal League and also with this new coalition that contains many groups, Coalition for a Stronger and Prosperous Michigan. I think I got that right, John. I'm sure you'll correct me. You're on.
I would never correct you, Arnold, at least publicly. So thank you, Arnold. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Little history about myself and Arnold. We actually used to work together. I'm not sure if that dates me or dates him, but Arnold and I go way back. So Arnold, thank you for inviting me today. Happy to be here. Happy to chat about the American Rescue Plan. A few things that we are doing organizationally, and then, as Arnold had mentioned, a little bit on the Coalition for a Strong and Prosperous Michigan. I'd be lying to you if I told you that the American Rescue Plan and the breakdown of it was simple. It's just, quite frankly, not. We've waited a long time to get final rules. There was an interim final rule in place for about 4 months. And for 3.5 of those months, we heard it'll just be a couple of weeks before the final rule is out. We finally have that now. It's given some additional clarity and some flexibility to what that act actually means, and then what we can do with that source of revenue. So what I want to do is I have a PowerPoint here. I'm going to walk through it. Obviously, if there are questions along the way and I can pull those out of the chat, I will do my best to stop and do that. Arnold, feel free to interrupt me and help facilitate something. If there's a timeliness to it, I'm happy to pause and do that. I will say that the presentation is long in terms of the number of slides. I know Arnold will send it out later, as well as a link to U.S. Treasury Department that has some fantastic resources. But I promise not to read every slide word for word. I really just kind of want to give you, particularly later in the presentation, kind of some of the depth that the coalition has gone to work within the bounds of the guidelines, the final rule, and then our efforts from an advocacy perspective, quite frankly, to influence some of you on the phone today and those that you work for in a constructive fashion that hopefully push Michigan forward as we all desire to see it be done. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here. I think I can do this appropriately. Arnold, if you can just chime in and let me know that you can see that okay?
Sure can, John.
All right, thank you. So as Arnold mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director of State and Federal Affairs at the Michigan Municipal League. I've been there for almost a decade now. And before that, I spent almost a decade in the state legislature working for a couple of different legislators. At the league, I primarily handle transportation and infrastructure policy. I dabble in energy and environment and communications and technology. And then lately, two of my primary roles have been one, coalition building as it relates to the Coalition for Strong and Prosperous Michigan. But then I also manage a group of our urban core mayors, known as the Urban Core Mayors, and then a group that we've spun off of them known as the City Business Collaborative, which has taken those mayors and paired them with business leaders from each of their individual communities. And that group includes, known entities like DTE and Rock Central to some very small local developers and local chambers that you wouldn't necessarily recognize in the headline of the paper. So it's been both challenging and rewarding at the same time. But what we have found is that there is great value in recognizing the interconnectivity between what happens at the municipal level, what happens with people, and then ultimately what happens in our business community. And a lot of what the American Rescue Plan represents is the opportunity to build upon those connections that already exist, and quite frankly, strengthen them through partnership and collaboration. So what really do we do organizationally? I always like to make sure, for those that aren't familiar with us, we just give a quick overview. Our members include cities, villages, and a few urban townships. There's 533 cities and villages in the state of Michigan. So as you can see here, 523 of those, or 519 if you take out the 4 townships, are actually our members. So we represent nearly everybody across the state. Nearly 4,000 elected officials, over 10,000 non-elected officials. We have 30 affiliate organizations, which most people don't think about when they think about MML. We have a foundation, and then we work with our national affiliate, the National League of Cities, on a very regular basis. And they were, instrumental in the enactment of the American Rescue Plan. This is just to show you kind of the broad overview of all of the stimulus relief funding to date. we tend to forget about the beginning of the pandemic in some ways, and the very first stimulus was $8 billion. And we thought that was going to help. It was going to be the stopgap we needed to get us through those first couple of weeks. And since then, we've enacted trillions of dollars since then. So if we look at the CARES Act, 1.7 trillion, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, 900, and then finally the American Rescue Plan at $1.9 trillion. So significant resources from the federal government dumped into a variety of issues, whether that be state and local government, whether that be small business help, whether that be hospitals, you name it. A ton of direct assistance has been provided by the feds in a variety of different avenues to help try to stem the effects of the pandemic. When we really think about this, and what I'm here to really break down and kind of talk about today is not the broader 1.9 trillion, but it's really the $350 billion that's out there for states and local governments. When we think about the scope of this, the feds are not really good at sending money to every single local unit across the state. Obviously, they are across the country. Obviously, they interact with the 50 states on a regular basis. They interact with some of the larger communities on a regular basis. But in terms of getting dollars to those smallest communities across the country, that is not something they're accustomed to, and typically is handled in partnership with state departments of treasury. So there are just over 19,000 local units of government, and really for the first time that we know of in the history of the federal government, they are sending direct allocations to each of those 19,000 local units of government across the country. They're distributed in two payments. So you get first payment this year, which came out in May. State Treasury Department then had to take those dollars, run them through a formula, which is a per capita based formula, and then distribute that out. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in a second, because there's some distinctions there that are really critical to understanding how ultimately at the end of the day the money can or needs to be spent and then tracked. And then the second tranche will be paid in May of 2022, so just a couple of months. So what are the eligible expenditures? This is pretty broad-based, and that was the intention of the feds when they tried to put this together. So obviously, first and foremost was responding to the public health emergency and the negative impacts. So everything from households to small businesses to nonprofits are all eligible to have a portion of this $350 billion spent. So whether that's the state allocating their resources to spend it in these categories, or even local government working with small businesses in their community, individual households, whatever it may be, to distribute the dollars that they're getting in an effective and efficient manner. Premium pay is an eligible expenditure. Provisions of government services to the extent impacted by a reduction in revenue. So that's a fancy way of saying we know that there are some communities out there as a result of the way in which they collect taxes. Their tax collection was lower than it was in the previous year. So they actually have a loss in revenue. And so one of the abilities that you have with these funds is to spend it in such a way that allows you to, one, not only make up for the lost revenue, but do so in the typical confines of how government would spend their resources. So you don't have some of the general restrictions that you might otherwise have within this. Dollars that are above your revenue loss would have to follow some very specific provisions within the final rule. And then in a very broad-based sense, you can spend it on water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And really some of the final rule has clarified when we think about sewer, that also includes stormwater. Sometimes it just doesn't get talked about that directly, but it's very clear in the final explanation that that is an eligible expenditure. What's not in there is expenditure on roads, though. So you can utilize these funds to, let's say, do a road if you're doing a water project in conjunction with it, but it has to be within the scope of that project. But if you just want to pave 3 miles of street in your neighborhoods, that is not an eligible expenditure under the American Rescue Plan Act, unless, and this is where things get a little confusing, unless it's part of that revenue loss calculation. And I keep mentioning that, and it's going to become important as we start to talk through this presentation a little bit more and understanding some of the changes that have been made in recent weeks. So there are some restrictions on uses, and this is important both for the way in which the state's going to look at spending their resources and the way in which some locals will spend their resources depending on how much they're actually getting. So one, you can't offset a reduction in net tax revenue. So essentially, you can't cut taxes and then backfill those dollars with American Rescue Plan dollars. You can't make a deposit into a pension fund as a result of this. You can't pay for debt service. So I know there's been some conversation in Lansing about thinking about the Flint water settlement. And is there some desire in town to pay that down? Yes, we know there is. Obviously, there's general fund available, but when we look at the American Rescue Plan dollars that are available, those are not able to be paid or be utilized on debt service. You also can't use, and I should actually probably not jump ahead. I apologize. It's actually a judgment in that case that falls under number 4, which you can't use it for settlements or judgments, which the Flint water case would be. And then you obviously can't use them in things that would conflict with the intention of the American Rescue Plan Act. So essentially to undermine the efforts by those that are trying to stem the impacts of the pandemic. Pretty broad-based language, fairly standard, but at the same time, it's very clear that the feds want, states and local governments to use these resources in a way that's going to help pull them out of any of the negative impacts that have been a result of the pandemic, whether that be health impact, business impact, individual impact. So the timing of this becomes very important too. So one, we talked about when the first tranche came, which was May of 2021. Second tranche is coming in May of 2022. The state and local units of government must actually obligate those funds by the end of 2024. And then those funds actually need to be expended by the end of 2026. We talk about this a lot because it seems as if that is a long time in which to spend these resources. And in reality, it is, and also in reality, it's not. It really depends on what you are electing to spend the resources on and what you want the impact to be. So we know that there's a big conversation, and the Senate has tackled this in a supplemental Senate Bill 565 that many of you are aware of, to deal with water infrastructure. Well, water infrastructure requires a lot of planning, design, procurement, contracts, and eventually the work has to be done. And that work is not done overnight. So when we think about the need to send signals and allocate these resources in an expeditious way, it is primarily from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from an economic development standpoint. So if we think about redevelopment, if we think about building new housing, if we think about revamping a street corner with a new facility, all of those things do take time to bring to fruition. So trying to figure out how we ensure that we allocate resources in a way that can be expended in an effective and efficient manner is going to be really, really critical in the decision-making process that the legislature is going to have to go through in the coming weeks and coming months. And then finally, I want to kind of get to this revenue loss calculation in a little bit more direct fashion. One, it's a rolling calculation, which is why you see that it's calculated in years 20, 21, 22, and 23. But the final rule made a significant change in how revenue loss calculation is actually impacting those that receive funds. And so what they do is, if you think about it in relation to your own taxes, where you have a check off of a certain amount, essentially what the feds have done is said, any community that receives less than $10 million in American Rescue Plan funds can treat that as part of their revenue loss calculation, which allows them to spend it as they would any general fund dollar that's out there, with the exceptions being those things that you saw that you couldn't spend it on. So debt, pensions, settlements. But other than that, you could spend it on roads now. You could continue to spend it on water and sewer infrastructure. You can spend it still in the nonprofit side or the small business side, but it gives you a lot more flexibility in how to spend that dollar. And it also reduces the reporting burden that was going to be placed on many of these smaller communities that weren't accustomed to receiving funds from the federal government, but now are getting them for the first time in history. So it really alleviated a lot of burden, created a lot of flexibility, but that doesn't necessarily mean the dollars by themselves are going to truly be impactful on a true one-to-one basis. And what do I mean by that? So I kind of want to give you an overview of how much money we're getting. If we look at this on paper, that is big dollars, right? I mean, really big dollars. But when we start to break that down, that looks very different. So state of Michigan's, and these are round numbers, getting 6.5 billion. Counties are getting 1.9 billion. Metro cities, which are cities typically over $50,000 and get CDBG or Community Development Block Grant allocations directly from the federal government. There are 49 of those in the state of Michigan, and they're getting 1.8 billion. And then non-entitlement units of local government are getting 644 million. And this is where we tend to spend the bulk of our time on this slide and thinking about that, because that is 1,724 local units of government splitting $644 million. Still, in the aggregate, a large amount of money. But oftentimes we talk about American Rescue Plan funds as being transformational or generational change. Well, the truth of the matter is for these non-entitlement units of government, about 80% of them are getting less than $500,000. And when we think about the operations of local government, that doesn't go very far. I mean, it wouldn't buy you a fire truck, it wouldn't get you an ambulance. You know, if we think about it in an FTP standpoint, you know, it's maybe 4 to 5 FTEs depending on who you're hiring and what you're looking at. And then we have to remember it's only one-time funding, so this isn't an ongoing source, and so that has to play into our decision-making process in terms of how we allocate and expend these funds ultimately at the end of the day. Just by comparison, if we think about how much money the state is getting, the state's population is roughly 10 million people, they're getting about about $650 per person, where if you're a non-entitlement unit of government, your allocation is about $104 per person. Just to talk a little bit more about some of the services that we provide as an organization to help our members through this process, we've stood up a Serve My City program, which really allows them direct access to us as an organization. And then we've partnered with public sector consultants, really put them in a position to understand where they can spend the money, how they can spend it, what reporting they need to do, if any, and then what these rule changes over the course of time have meant to their ability to expend and allocate those resources in an appropriate fashion. We really want to make sure that we ensure every dollar counts from the standpoint of our membership. So making sure that we partner and continue to partner with the National League of Cities, and they have a Great Lakes Navigator program, which allows additional technical support on access to grants. Arnold had mentioned before, and I'm going to talk more about the Coalition for a Strong and Prosperous Michigan and sort of our thoughts on how the state can invest their resources to help leverage and amplify those against local resources. And then there are some really good resources that have been out there. U.S. Treasury, which I've shared with Arnold to share out with you after this, is a great resource page for just about anything you could imagine or want. And then the Michigan Department of Treasury has done a nice job of laying out the things that they have seen and worked through in this process to provide information and access to those that would need to ask for and have these funds allocated to them. We also really advocate that we think strategically about the process. And this is true whether you're at the local level or you're at the state level. But you got to think about what your master plan is, what your strategic priorities are, your capital improvement programs, and other things that you have going on. You have to think about stakeholder engagement. So whether that be from the local level with elected officials, your staff, your residents, your business community, your philanthropic groups, your nonprofits. It's no different than the constituents that many of you and those that you work for have to think about when it comes to their constituents and those that they represent. Think about potential projects, really thinking about a long-term return on investment, the impact that there's going to be long-term, and then leveraging other funds to maximize what we have available to us and to others. Think about program requirements. So can I do X versus Y? can I change the scope of a current project I have available to maximize its impact because now I have these resources? Or do I need to think entirely different about what opportunities sit in front of me because of the way in which these resources make other things possible? And then finally, other funding opportunities. So a lot of this focus here in this presentation is on the $350 billion that's coming into states and local governments. We do tend to forget sometimes that there is a $1.9 trillion package that is around this, and there are other opportunities for grants and access to funds that aren't directly part of that $350 billion pot. Project possibilities, just as a couple of things here. We talked about revenue loss that would cover budget shortfalls, funding capital improvements, so water, sewer infrastructure. Developing affordable or attainable housing was a big component of this, and you'll see here in a second. And it's a big component, part of what the Coalition for a Strong and Prosperous Michigan is talking about. Helping impacted businesses and then individuals as well, all allowable under the ARP state and local resource allocation. And then ultimately, we want to amplify impact. So one, we don't want to leave money on the table. And I can tell you from a local government standpoint, we had mentioned the counties, the metropolitan cities, the non-entitlement units. What I can tell you is we only had about a handful or just over a dozen communities not accept the funds out of those over 1,800 communities. And of that total, about $4.4 billion of allocation to local units of government, there was only $2.5 million that was not accounted for in terms of those that decided to accept those funds. And fortunately, the way in which this proposal works, they all elected to keep those funds within the state of Michigan, and that $2.5 million was reallocated out to other local units of government that were eligible. So where it was possible, we could have given money back to the federal government and they would have redistributed it across other states. We did not do that for a single penny of allocation, at least for the local funds. State funds still to be determined, but I'm guessing, like much of this on this phone, we fully anticipate spending all of those resources that will be sent to us in totality from the American Rescue Plan. And I have Oakland County in here, and that's not supposed to be specific just for Oakland County. That's a mistake on my part by not changing the slide. But obviously we want people to seek partnerships. So whether that's with local county governments, with your NGOs, business philanthropy, thinking about other federal, state, and funding sources, and then creating opportunities to establish and retain trust, and then think innovatively and build resiliency are keys to long-term success in this. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes now, and this is where, if you get motion sickness, I'm gonna fly through these next slides as we get through this. But I want to just give you some depth on what we're really talking about when we think from the outside how we can leverage state resources against local resources, and really the creation of this Coalition for a Strong and Prosperous Michigan, which really came out of a conversation that many groups were having with the state budget office. We recognized that there was a little bit of a siloed approach to that, and we wanted to try to bring people together to have a conversation that says, hey, if we really put our collective heads together, what can we get out of this that wasn't selfish, that didn't necessarily benefit only us, but benefited the collective because of the uniqueness of this opportunity? Can we come up with something that does that? So I'm actually proud to say that this coalition, from the inception of its work, has grown from an idea to over 60 individuals and groups from across the state. Again, both with recognizable names to those that may not be as recognizable. But it's something that we put a lot of time, energy, and effort in. And many of you on this phone, quite frankly, have probably heard from us in a variety of ways and will continue to hear from us. But the idea behind it is to invest, leverage, and amplify resources that are available to us. We know we have resources at the local level, but I have mentioned to you that for the majority of local units of government, what they're getting, while it is substantial in terms of what we think in terms of resources, but if we really want to take advantage of it to the fullest extent, we need to be able to leverage that in partnership with the state. And that is really what we are talking about in very direct fashion here. We've broken it into 5 buckets, as a way in which to think about this, but that's water infrastructure, broadband, fiscal health, thriving communities, strong economy, public health and safety. And to be honest with you, we really think that the sweet spot in this is those middle 3 bubbles. So the thriving community, strong economy, and public health and safety, which is really where the strength of the partnership of the coalition exists. And that is really where the business community, local governments, private developers, philanthropic groups, nonprofits have come together to say, you know what, collectively together, here's what we've recognized we need and the investment areas that we think we should be targeting. And here's a thoughtful way in which to do that, all with this, end goal of a return on investment that's going to propel future generations. So just a little bit more specifically here on some of these topics, when we think about infrastructure, we're really thinking about resilient and sustainable water systems. Obviously, high-speed access or high-speed broadband access is a huge topic in the state, and one that continues to need investment. Thinking about how we provide stability at both the local and state level from a fiscal health standpoint, thinking about housing and community development, what it means for economic development, business assistance, developing and retaining a skilled workforce, and then obviously talent attraction. And then public health and safety. I mean, we can't forget that we are and have been in a pandemic, for a couple of years now, and those effects are ongoing, whether that be with individuals, with families, or within communities, or those that we care about on Main Street and the businesses that they run and operate. Now, this is really where this is going to start to go, and you can slide through these types of slides once you get them. And so once I'm done here, we can open it up and see if there's any questions, Arnold. But this is just the depth of the proposal is really what this is. And to show you that we've spent a lot of time working on some specifics and really taking the resources that are available to the state. So that top line 6.5 billion number, which is now down to about 5.7, 5.8, based on I should actually say about 5.3 based on some recent spending. But all either within some of the categories that we've aligned here or still with the potential to invest in these areas. So, about $2.5 billion in the water systems. There's a variety of ways to do this to have it get into communities of different sizes, large and small. That continues with that thought process here. But thinking about, combined sewer overflows, the need for septics, what to do with basement flooding and how we mitigate that. Lead line replacement, which we know is a significant issue, continue to be talked about in part of the Senate proposal that's out there. Planning and design. I'd mentioned how important it is to think about, the time it takes to get infrastructure projects off the ground. So continuing to support those types of things. Statewide drinking water assistance, similar to what we have on the heat and electric side, to ensure that, we're not shutting people's water off and making sure that they can continue to afford and pay those bills when the situation requires. Continuing to think about the environment, whether that be from a dam perspective, PFAS mitigation, and other things. Obviously broadband, we talked about that. So money back into the Connecting Michigan Communities grant, thinking about what we've coined as broadband deserts, or infill broadband, where there's actually gaps in coverage in more urbanized areas. Digital literacy, some personal property tax issues we've dealt with over the course of time, and how to be creative in thinking about balancing the need for deployment with revenue sources that are important to local government. Fiscal stability. Nobody's surprised that revenue sharing's in here. If it's coming from the municipal league, I understand that. But you probably wouldn't recognize the fact that we would be associated with advocating for deposits into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which is really to speak to the strength of the partnership that the coalition has and the well-roundedness of our thought process in the proposal to say, you know what, you have to take care of communities on one hand, but there's also businesses that have been struggling on the other, and how do we do that? Which this really gets us more into some of the sweet spot of this, which gets more onto the private side, which is investment into housing, making sure that we have access to help and deal with those things from a contracting standpoint, incentivizing building trades training, placemaking grants, investments in local parks, in our nonprofits, ensuring that communities are ready to deal with some of the housing issues, and even some employee housing tax credits to ensure that businesses are in a position to be successful. Thinking about this more regionally to ensure that we're maximizing and leveraging those resources that we have available to us on a grand scale. Thinking about historic tax credits. I know a huge topic of discussion is what do we do with empty office space? I'm sitting at home today. Some of you, although I can't see you on camera, are probably doing the same. That remote work aspect is not going anywhere anytime soon. It might not be done to the extent that we're doing it today, but it's going to be an ongoing component of what we think about. So for empty office space, how do we convert that into a usable use again? So whether that be residential or mixed use, thinking about how we redevelop and utilize brownfields. Thinking about strategic and large site development. Obviously, there was an extensive economic development package that passed at the end of last year, specifically targeted at significant large sites, mega sites. But there are still some continued and ongoing needs to think strategically about other large sites that we have in the state and what it would mean to invest in those as we think about the manufacturing sector. Job training, a variety of different areas that you can invest money. We know there are supply chain issues. How do we think about leveraging that to help our industries around housing and manufacturing? Hospitality training, which again, the Senate and the House and the governor came to an agreement on $409 million at the end of last year to help with some of the hospitality industry needs. But there's still some ongoing concerns and thoughts that need to be addressed within that. It's no secret, right? Battery plants are coming to Michigan now. Continuing to think about how we make ourselves more EV ready and friendly is going to be a key aspect to the development and deployment of that technology. And then finally, as I mentioned, public health and safety. So everything from the direct facilities that we think about, the mental health to public safety. Ours in here doesn't have the same amount as what the House did in terms of some of the public safety aspect, but you can tell that these buckets are very much aligned. And then, some more restaurant licensing and inspection reimbursements to help the hospitality industry, cybersecurity, and then social determinants of health as we're trying to help those that need the most help. So with that, I'm going to quit sharing here for a second and then just wrap up by, one, again, Arnold saying thank you. But two, as I had started this presentation, it's a lot. This is not easy. The final rule is, hundreds and hundreds of pages. What we as an organization and us as a coalition have really set out to do is to find ways to cut through some of the noise, to be a voice that offers some thoughts and constructive ideas, but ultimately at the end of the day, doesn't say it has to be done a particular way, but recognizes the value in partnership, recognizes the value in it being comprehensive and strategic, and understanding that if we're going to be successful here, that a siloed approach probably doesn't get it done, but a connected approach that thinks about how we leverage these things across multiple sectors and invest these resources in a way that's going to provide dividends is going to put us in a position to be successful, not only as a state of Michigan, but to compete against the Ohios, the Texases, Californias, the Floridas, and beyond, quite frankly. So with that, Arnold, again, thank you very much. Happy to take any questions if there are. You started early, so I figured I'd end early, and hopefully that's not a problem.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that information. And again, if you do have a question for John, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll get to it. You're right about one thing, there's a lot there. And as we noted, we'll be making these slides available to those in attendance here today for them to be able to review it at their own leisure. Maybe I missed it, but did you speak at all to who's part of this coalition?
Yeah, I didn't get into all of the specific names, and while I'm sitting here, what I can do, Arnold, is we've actually created a fairly nice website. I can pull that up and I can drop that into the chat.
Yeah,
and then
I think it is important for folks to understand that this is a broad-based coalition. The league might be a leading member of it, but that you've got business organizations and others in there. Is that right?
Yeah. That is correct. And I'm always very careful about this. We've been fortunate in some ways to be able to go out and speak about this, but this is not a coalition that is being driven by the league. And that was very intentional by us. I think why we've been successful is because we've allowed everybody in this coalition to have ownership of what we're doing. And everything from the creation of the policy to working out where we thought specific resources should need to go with specific dollar amounts was truly group thought. So, I mean, within the coalition, we have individual mayors, you have groups like the American Water Works Association, DTE Energy, Housing North, Global Detroit. We have, groups representing labor. We have other local government groups like the counties and the townships, Michigan Association of Land Banks, Planning. But even, some that you wouldn't necessarily think about with us, like, the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association and what they do there. MITA, Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, is a part of this. They're in a number of others. And so, we think about some small chambers, the Muskegon Lakeshore Chamber of Commerce and the Saginaw County Chamber of Commerce are part of this. We have some individual developers. Renovari Development and Shaheen Development. We're probably all excited about the fact, I know I was, although I'm still waiting for my care package, that Shorts Brewing is a member of the coalition. And I mention that one because I'm not going to lie, I just think it's kind of cool. But the other thing is they are really dealing right now very specifically in the town of Bel Air with a project that they're trying to get off the ground that's going to create some housing, add some additional capacity. And what they're finding up there is, one, they're struggling to find the workforce, right? And when they find the workforce, those individuals are struggling to find housing that's attainable to them. And that is really, really important within this discussion, because when you think about the proposal in the grand sense, it layers in all of that. So whether it's job training, resources to improve and build housing stock across the state, and then ensuring you have things like access to clean water, which in that business is incredibly important, and why we've been able to work with them and talk with them about this. So, it is broad-based, and it honestly continues to grow. We just added a couple of new members in the last week. We're going to continue to do that over the course of time and continue to spread.
Thanks. Thanks, John. We do have a question. I think it's a great one from Ben Dawson. Are communities able to pool their resources and do regional projects, assuming the project meets the qualifications specified? I know that, in working with MSU Extension this fall, we did a series of workshops around the state with the Michigan Association of Regions. And that was certainly one of the points we tried to emphasize was take your time, see what's within your own plans and think big. So can they do regional projects?
Yeah, the very simple answer is yes. And actually, the Michigan Association of Regions is a member of the coalition. And if you look at the coalition proposal, there's about $250 million in there specifically to that thought process around regionalism. And if we're actually going to leverage the resources in which we talk about doing that, not only are you going to need the individual community likely layered on with state ARP resources, you're going to need to think collaboratively with other partners. So whether that be a neighboring municipality, whether that be the surrounding county, or even the surrounding region, depending on what you're thinking about for a particular project. And it works from everything from water and sewer to what we think about to investment in small business, to investment in housing and other economic development tools. And clearly on the public health side, should that be the route you decide to go with what you want to spend those resources.
I believe one of the really unique things about this program is that you can partner with nonprofits. You can partner with, it doesn't have to be another local government entity, another governmental entity that you have to partner with. That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, it really is. And honestly, it's critically important because I had mentioned, resources available above and beyond the $350 million that's part of the state and local fiscal relief fund. But there's a lot of other programs, some of which the state's even standing up that individuals need access to. So providing and having the ability to partner with nonprofits or community action agencies, and a variety of others is really, really important to maximizing the resources that you have available. But when we talk about leveraging and ultimately at the end of the day, amplifying those, that's what that gets to, because what you want to do and what we've talked to our members about, in addition to being patient in their decision-making process, is to try to figure out how you take $10 and turn it into 100, and 100 into 1,000, and 1,000 into more as you track that out. And you only do that through partnership.
Great point. Another great question about the recent passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. How has that impacted or changed the discussion for locals as they figure out what to spend their ARP funding on?
Yeah, so this is a question that comes up frequently, as you would imagine. And when we think about infrastructure, as I had mentioned, I've worked on infrastructure my entire career at the league and spent a lot of time when I was a Senate staffer as well. The truth of the matter is, when you add ARP funds and you add the new funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, one, it's not enough resources to deal with what we see on the water side. I'll speak a little bit more directly to the IIJA quickly, because again, I always think there's some truth that needs to be told about the way in which we read a headline in these cases. So the headline on that is $1.2 trillion. That is a lot of money. Only about 550 billion of that is new resources. Again, a lot of money. But the bulk of that is transportation funding. And a lot of it that is not new money is transportation reauthorization. So it's actually money we're already getting. When you think about the state of Michigan, the collective aspect of the IIJA, which is only a program that runs for 5 years, is about $11 billion. And again, 7.3 billion of that is all transportation related, about 5.5 of which we're already getting in the state. If we break that down to water infrastructure, which we know is really important, and I promise I'm going to get to a point here, it's about $213 million on an annual basis. That, when you couple it with, or that by itself doesn't really get at the billions of dollars in need that we have in the water infrastructure space in this state, which is why the IIJA and the American Rescue Plan should not be think about as supplanting one another, but really as a way in which to layer on, right? And address the needs that we have. So they actually work much more in conjunction than they do sort of saying, hey, well, now that we have these infrastructure dollars, we don't need to think about the American Rescue Plan in that aspect. It's actually really the exact opposite of it. It gives us a way in which to continue to leverage resources and layer on to the very direct needs that we have.
So one of the issues I think you just mentioned is that at the end of the day, this is a lot of money, and it's a lot of resources and a lot of possibilities for initiatives and programming. The state recently set up a new infrastructure office, a new broadband office. Having worked in this area for a number of years, what are your thoughts about whether or not the state and or local units of government are actually have the capacity to handle all this?
Yeah, in a lot of cases they don't. That being said, one thing I want to be really clear about, both the direction of the coalition and quite frankly, the direction of the legislature in many cases, is the way in which we've looked at these resources is not to create a bunch of new programming. We got enough programming out there. It's really about finding ways to maximize the programming that we have. And some of that, to your point, Arnold, requires capacity, both at the state level and at the local level. The nice part about the American Rescue Plan is it does allow for some of that capacity building. So whether that is hiring an outside contractor in which to help you put together your plans for a water infrastructure project, design those plans, even help applying for funds, you can do that. And the true would be the same at the state. And there's some caps on it, as you would expect. So it's not as if you can put all that money into increasing capacity. But what has been clearly recognized is, with so much money into the system, and with the fact that even pre-pandemic, there were capacity issues at different levels of government, that this helps try to address some of those. And again, it's not just to hire more FTEs. That's not the point. The point is to be as efficient as possible with those resources that you need to push out into other environments and other areas, which is why they allow for that capacity building in some cases.
Great perspective. Thanks, John. One other question I have is, so you put this proposal, you have this coalition, you put these proposals on the table. How are discussions going with the legislature and the administration?
Well, discussions maybe never go good till you see something signed by the governor, no matter what you feel
Right.
like. That being said, having advocated for a number of issues over the course of time and probably sat across the table for many of the people on the phone call today, nobody's told us no, but that doesn't mean you're being told yes. I think what we're hopeful about is that our priorities from a coalition standpoint generally align with the priorities of both the legislature and the administration. Details at this point are going to start to matter, as well as timing and that sense of urgency that we talked about. So we have said all along from a coalition standpoint, and it's labeled roadmap intentionally, is that this isn't a mandate from the coalition to say it has to be done this way. This is our thoughts and our ideas to say, here's a comprehensive and strategic way to look at this holistically, which to date, no other outside group has done. And so I think that's provided us some opportunity to have some constructive conversations, to really sit at the table and talk through some issues that matter. And we don't want it picked up lock, step one, because we know it won't be. But two, there are other people that have great ideas that might not have been part of the coalition because we couldn't bring everybody in. And so the idea ultimately at the end of the day is to find the best path forward, do so comprehensively, and ensure that we don't silo issues, because we think that is the one way in which you're going to limit your ability to maximize the resources that you have available. So I would couch it as maybe good to very good, but a lot of work to be done. The legislature has a lot of thoughts on what they want to do. We respect those thoughts, and we're going to do everything we can to continue to work with them over the course of the next few weeks and months to do something that's going to work for all of us.
I know you have to hop off for a 10 o'clock meeting yourself, John, but one final question. As the governor's budget will be released this next week and discussion gets underway on the FY23 budget with its surplus of money still to be dealt with and the ARP funding, there are reports that there are upwards of $10 billion out there for spending purposes. What are your hopes or expectations by the time we get around to maybe putting in place the FY23 budget by the end of June or early July?
Well, there's no question, there's truth to the statement that it's always harder to do budgets when you have money than when you have to cut money. But I think what we want to do and make sure that we continue to move forward in a way that's not going to allow us to miss opportunities. And what I mean by that is there are clearly a lot of decisions that need to be made. But recognizing that the ARP pot of money is a pot of money that needs to be dealt with really more in the immediate term. There's going to be conversations we know around what do we do with tax cuts. It's already been hitting the headlines and things like that. And those are probably appropriate conversations to have. And we're not saying that you shouldn't, or legislators shouldn't, or the governor shouldn't. There's questions about what do we think about this from a long-term perspective in terms of how we invest, maybe available general fund resources that are only going to be there one time versus what might be ongoing surplus. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the strategic progression that we would like to see is to, come out of the budget, rec, understand that ARP is still sitting in front of us with some urgency needing to get that done to ensure that we maximize it, because there is a deadline for expending those and allocating those resources, and then having those constructive conversations about what we do with the rest of the available resources and the current state budget to layer into the decisions that we're making around other areas of investment. Because you look at what we did last week, or excuse me, I can't even say last month now, but last year in December with the economic development incentive package, that's going to and should influence some of our future decision-making process, which means we need to do things like invest in housing to ensure that those jobs that we're creating can support those individuals from a quality of life standpoint with places to live that they can attain and are affordable to them. So everything's going to layer on. But I think, lately relationships have been positive, conversations have been positive, and we hope it continues in that direction.
John, thank you very much for taking time to be with us today. Very informative presentation, laid out very nicely, chock full of information, obviously. And I'm sure you might be getting some contacts from staff and those on the webinar today moving forward. But good luck. And again, thank you. And thanks for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you, Arnold. Feel free to pass my contact information along, and we'll see everyone around soon, hopefully.
Appreciate it. And again, thanks to everyone for being with us this morning. We're gonna roll right into our next session, which will feature folks from the Legislative Service Bureau and Legislative Council, Jennifer Detloff and her team from the Legislative Service Bureau, to talk to you about resources available to you here we go. I think this is Jennifer. There we go. Here comes Jennifer. Resources available to you all as staff to help make your jobs easier. And you may, I'm sure, already be aware of them, but we featured this presentation at the beginning of 2021 as the session was getting underway, and we thought it would be a good idea to once again bring forth folks from the LSB to reacquaint you with the services available to you. And so with that, I think, Jennifer, if you're ready, feel free to kick us off. Thanks for being with us.
Great. Thanks for having me, Arnold, and good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning, and hopefully everyone's staying warm. I'm going to do just a quick introduction on Legislative Council. I'm sure you're all familiar with us in our largest agency, LSB, and then hand it over to Kevin Studebaker, the head of our legal division, and then Shanda Greco, who's the head of our research division, to kind of dive more into the details. So for those of you who don't know about Legislative Council, we are a nonpartisan confidential service entity that serves both chambers, House and Senate. Similar to the fiscal agencies, there's one in the House, one in the Senate. We serve everyone. And we have about 100 staff in total, and we're here strictly to serve you. That is our only job and focus, is to help your offices and help your members. Our team does not provide policy advice. We don't get into that side. That's for you, the experts, the members, and the staff. What we focus more on is how we can serve you achieving those goals that you and your boss want to meet. So I think Arnold sent along this blue form. I'm just going to run through our different divisions quickly. So LSB is our largest agency. I'm sure you've heard of our legal division, which Kevin is the head of. That serves both chambers, again, nonpartisan, confidential information. So those are the folks you call when you want to change the tax code and you want to draft that bill. We're not going to tell you how you want to do it or if it's a good idea or not, but we're happy to draft that legislation and policy for you. Kevin's team does about 20,000 documents, everything from bills to joint resolutions, substitutes, amendments, all that good stuff. Next up is our research division, which Shanda is the head of. They do all of your research, resolution drafting, and again, nonpartisan, completely confidential. So if you call Shanda and her team and have a question, they cannot share with anyone, just as Kevin's team as well, cannot share with anyone what you called and asked about, what you're looking for information on, just to reiterate that. Then next is our printing division. We do everything from your newsletters, your booklets, the journals, the Michigan Manual. Last fiscal year, we did about 5.7 million newsletters, about 250,000 booklets were distributed to member offices. That is our print shop. And then our info systems, our IT department, if you will. We handle Millennia, which is your chamber automation system, internet services to the House and the Senate. Telecom, I think Alan is going to be on later this afternoon to talk about telecom specifically and how we can help you achieve those goals, especially in a remote working era. And then last up, not under the LSB umbrella, are our 2 ombudsman offices, a corrections ombudsman and a veterans ombudsman. Those offices are strictly to assist your office. If you get a phone call from a constituent who has a family member or someone who's incarcerated and has a question or doesn't understand a policy of the department, they can do some investigation and do some research for you. The corrections ombudsman alone handled 2,000 complaints last fiscal year. And again, they are completely confidential, willing to just help you and your boss navigate any questions you might have with the department. Same with the veterans ombudsman. While that position is currently vacant, we are still responsive to those complaints and emails and questions that you and your boss should have. So the question I get most asked is about, how do ideas translate into legislation? And while our agencies are happy to facilitate that, we don't start with the idea. The ideas are usually brought to us and then we help you facilitate those. So, a constituent or a district issue comes up in your district, you reach out to our staff for maybe research on it with Shanda's shop, or we know the change we want to make in the law. Here's the problem and what we think is the solution, reaching out to Kevin's team. We won't tell you if it's a good idea or not, but we'll help you facilitate that and navigating that. So unless there's any further questions, I'll probably hand it over to Kevin to kind of dive into the legal realm.
Yeah, again, if you have any questions for Jennifer and her team along the way, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. But yeah, I think Kevin, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Arnold. As Jen said, I'm Kevin Studebaker. I'm the director of the legal division. Who are we? We're essentially your nonpartisan legal counsels and bill drafters. So we draft all bills, joint resolutions, and substitutes most amendments for the House and Senate. So you're brand new, your boss comes to you, has an idea for a bill. What do you do? How do you submit a bill request? We will take them any way possible. Generally, the best way is MySource. So MySource is an internet site you should have available on your computers. That allows you to view and submit bill requests, resolution requests, printing requests. Essentially allows you to access all of the services available for the Legislative Council. What happens when you submit that bill request? So essentially we have a bill request coordinator. So Patsy and Sarah will take that bill request in, they'll analyze it, they'll determine what area it's supposed to go to and whether or not a member has submitted a request before you. We have Legislative Council rules that provide how we draft things, how we put numbers on things, and essentially priority system. If another member has a request that's similar to yours, they will reach out to you and tell you there's another member with the same request. Do you wish to proceed? Do you wish to co-sponsor? Do you want to cancel that request? Essentially, once Patsy has analyzed that and determined where it goes, she will then assign it to an attorney. So each attorney in our office specializes in specific areas. The attorney will get that bill request. They'll analyze what you've submitted, see if there's any questions. If there isn't any questions and they think they can get you a draft, essentially they will figure out what area of the law they need to amend, what section of law they need to amend, change the language, and then send you a draft. And then obviously we work all the way through the process. As Jen said, we will attend drafting meetings, we'll attend committee meetings. Once the bill is introduced, we will draft subs and amendments for every member of the House and Senate on that bill. And we follow it through to the second house as well. In addition, if your bill goes to the governor and she signs it and files it with Secretary of State, that then comes back to our office as well. We maintain the Michigan compiled laws. So our compiler will take that in. She'll determine the effective dates and essentially put it into the Michigan compiled laws. So what should you include in a bill request? As Jen mentioned, problem and solution. So what problem in society or law are you attempting to address and how do you want to fix it? Now, that doesn't have to be detailed of amend this section of the Income Tax Act by changing this percentage to this percentage. Essentially, it can be something as simple as, Kevin, my boss thinks income taxes are too high. We'd like to lower them by 0.5%. So that would come in, Patsy would analyze it, Patsy would send it to Kelly Seifried, one of the attorneys in our office. And Kelly would determine, okay, I need to amend this section of the Income Tax Act, and I'm going to lower the rate by 0.5%. It can be that simple. It can be extremely detailed. For instance, you may be working with a group or a constituent. You've been working for a long time. You may have proposed language. You may have model language that somebody sent you. You may know the exact MCL section. It can be any of those things that you can send to us, but always remember problem and solution. So a lot of times we'll get proposed language or model language. All states have different styles and procedures. So the model language doesn't always fit. If you send me 80 pages of Connecticut law on firearms and tell me to implement this, you're gonna get a lot of questions from me. It's much easier to say, Kevin, I really wanna do this. Here's what Connecticut has done so I can actually carve out the pieces of Connecticut law that you actually want. Also, sometimes people give you language and you think it does one thing and it does another. So I think, once again, problem and solution, because if I have the problem and I have the solution, I can always go to you and say, I think this language needs to be tweaked here, or this does the exact opposite of what you want to do. What we try to prevent is you or your boss being surprised in committee and someone's basically claiming your bill does the exact opposite of what you were testifying at. Take advantage of our drafters' experience. So we have hundreds of years of drafting experience here. We've probably seen almost every type of bill, or at least a portion of it. So I know everyone thinks they have a brand new idea. You may, but I would be pretty shocked if I haven't seen something at least similar to it. So, I know we can't do policy, but we can give you options. So essentially, if you give me a problem and a solution, so what the problem is, how do you want to solve it? I can give you, multiple different options of how to solve that. There's not always one right answer. There's multiple answers usually. So also be honest with us. Obviously we're confidential, as Jen mentioned. Everything you tell us is confidential. The more honest you are with us, the better we can craft your language, frankly. If you want something to show a constituent, that's fine. Tell us. We're going to probably raise legal issues throughout and issues with the language. If all you want is a statement piece, we don't have to dive into all those details with you necessarily. If you want a court case, so sometimes we will tell you there are constitutional issues. Sometimes you want that court case. You want to bring it through the court. You think the U.S. Supreme Court has changed, and you think it's going to benefit you on a certain policy, and you want the lawsuit. So that's fine. Tell us that. I'm not going to tell Tim Skubic. I can't tell Tim Skubic. I'm not going to share with anyone. So, but the more honest with us you are, the easier it is for us to draft something that actually reflects your intent. If you don't have the answers on a bill request, please connect us with the people who do. I mean, it's perfectly fine. If the department brought this to your boss and you really don't know anything about firearms, let me talk to the state police. So Kevin, I don't know, but I will hook you up with a person in the Department of State Police that has the answers to this. We're more than willing to work with them. In addition, constituents, business groups, whoever this is that is actually bringing this before you. Also, remember, we're here to help you. As I mentioned, we will probably raise legal issues. I would suggest you listen to us, but you don't have to. So it's my job to inform you of legal issues and make sure that you're not surprised in committee. It's perfectly fine if you ignore that legal counsel. It happens all the time. However, if you do ignore it, all I ask is that you're clear to us or clear to the attorney that they know that, or that you know that at least. So Kevin, I understand the concerns regarding X. We'd still like to continue with the policy. Amendments and subs. The biggest thing for amendments and subs for us is who is it for and what time do you need it? So we work for 148 members, all the staff. So we're very busy. As Jen mentioned, we do 20,000+ documents per session. So if you need it, if everything's ASAP, then, I always say if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So be honest with us on that as well. Hey, I have committee next Wednesday. I need it before then. Or we have a work group today. I'm gonna need it by 5 o'clock. In addition, who's it for? It's a lot of times we'll get, especially this is more for the policy staff or central staff. We'll get a request. I need an amendment for committee, and we have to send it back. Who's it for? What rep is it for? Everything we do is for a rep, because once again, it's uploaded to my source, and it's available for that rep to see when they go and view their requests. In addition, if you have a timed document, please call us. I'm very busy. All of our staff is very busy. If you email me and I'm busy with another client, I may not see that email on time. If you call the front desk, Ed can find an attorney. He'll know where I'm at. He'll know if I'm available. And if not, he'll find an attorney that will do that for you. In addition, I mentioned My Source. My Source is great for submitting bill requests, joint resolution requests, not for amendments or timed documents. Patsy will review that on a daily basis, obviously, but sometimes there's 50 or 60 or 100 or 200 requests in there at a time. If your amendment request is needed for committee in an hour and it's at the bottom of that list, we're probably not going to notice it until whenever Patsy sorts through the rest of those requests. So once again, you can email, but please follow up with a phone call at least. Obviously, there's certain things we can't do. We can't do your will. We don't do ballot questions. Basically, anything that isn't related to bills or legislation. We are more than happy to discuss Michigan law, but once again, it has to relate to bills or legislation. Finally, call us if you have any questions. If you don't remember anything else from this presentation, 373-9425. Call us. I'm more than willing to talk through anything with you. So is my staff. We're here to help you. We're here to help your boss. We're here to hopefully make you look good or make your boss look good and accomplish whatever legislative intent you want. So with that, I will probably turn it back over.
Thanks, Kevin. Jennifer, I think Shanda is up next.
Yes.
Shanda, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. My name is Shanda Greco. I have been with the council since 2016, but most recently took over for Michael Campana last year as Research Services Division Director. So some of you might be familiar with our division. We tend to start things in the process a little bit sooner than Kevin's group. So if you are unsure of where you want to take a policy or you want a little bit more information on a subject, that is where we step in to help provide that. Our office provides three main functions. The first being that research component, the other being that we will draft policy resolutions for you. And the other is that we maintain the legislative reference library, which LSB is statutorily required to maintain. We have staff. We currently have a staff of 7 analysts, and they all have various backgrounds, but they all have at least graduate degrees. They are not attorneys. I am, but we do work with the legal division where the questions that you are bringing to us might cross over into the legal realm. So some of those questions that might fall into that category, but we're happy to answer and work with legal division to answer are, is there a state or federal law that relates to a certain subject area? Is this allowed in the state of Michigan? Those kind of questions that will ultimately lead to a bill, or you might be tossing around with your boss. We can help you find those answers in conjunction with legal, but also, we are expert researchers and that's what we do. So another key that might be helpful for you is that we can provide legislative history on an issue. So like Kevin said, there's not a whole lot of new ideas in the legislature. That tends to be true. And things can be cyclical and you might be reverting something to a policy that worked in the past. We can help you provide, or we can provide you with that legislative history that can help answer some of those questions. And lastly, another good example of something that we can do is we can help you do research on what's happening in other states. So again, Kevin referenced, what are the gun laws in Connecticut? We can help you track down, research from all 50 states on what they're doing legislatively on an issue, how they've tackled something, whether legislation has been successful in other states, that kind of thing. We love a challenge when it comes to research. So there is nothing that we aren't happy to start looking into for you. Similar to Kevin's group, we can take our research requests in a number of ways. My source, we're on there as well, but you can always shoot us an email or give us a call, and we will get going on that for you. So I don't really have anything else more specific than that. I think, we're supportive of you in all areas, or, all levels of the process, from idea to PA and beyond. We're here to support you in the research side of it. So
Thank you,
I'll turn it back
Shanda.
over. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Jennifer, I have a question for you. You have other divisions as well that can be of assistance to legislators and legislative staff. Can you maybe take a moment to run through some of those and what they do?
Sure. So legal and research are usually what's the most heard of. The print shop is in your offices probably right now. You have our materials. It's everything from business cards, notepads, any stationery requests to the booklets that you hand out to constituents. We also do labeling. When I started 100 years ago in the legislature, I used to label maps. That's now a service that the print shop provides. The journals we do also at the print shop. So once session wraps up, we work closely with the parliamentarians to finalize the journals, and we end up at the end of the year compiling those, printing those, binding those for the parliamentarians as well. Obviously, they're also available on the MyLeg website. And then the Michigan Manual is also a compilation that Shanda's group puts together. That's a great summary of all the legislature, which you'll see over my shoulder, actually, a couple of copies of that, also available on MyLeg as well. So that's our print shop under the LSB umbrella. And then our IT division, by and large, does a lot of the chamber automation. So while we don't necessarily, you won't see us on the floor running voting boards or anything like that, we're doing the behind the scenes of moving the tokens of the bills from committee, kind of the IT background of that portion of it. We also provide the internet services to the House and the Senate, telecom as well. And then IS also provides the MyLeg website and MySource and kind of managing that. So let's say you have a new staff member coming on board. You need to make sure that Kevin's team can get requests from them. You can reach out to the legal division and they'll reach out with and work closely with our IS division to make sure that new staff member can put in bill requests or remove somebody from putting in bill requests. Those are the other two large divisions we have under the LSB umbrella. Does that answer your question, Arnold?
Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate that. When I was a legislative staffer myself, always found your folks to be so helpful and great resources. Can you, I think it can be kind of confusing, except for the fact that folks know that the bills come from drafting for folks. Can you maybe delineate a little bit more the roles and responsibilities of legal drafting versus research and how they can complement an office's request?
Sure. So I'll start at the idea portion and then hand it over to Shanda for the research and Kevin to kind of touch base on that. Our ideas that come into your offices and then float to ours come anywhere from district issues to a constituent problem. I have this DEQs out on my property. I don't understand what's going on. It can be from lobbyists, policy staff members. NCSL and CSG are also great organizations that have a lot of examples on their websites. As Shanda mentioned, historically, we can pull on the research end of things, what has been done in the past on tax issues. So let's say your boss is the new chairman of X committee. They want to know everything about insurance code. They can reach out to Shanda's group and start pulling that historical documentation. Why did that bill 2 years ago fail? What was going on, and kind of pull that background. So backing up to the idea, where does it start? It starts in the member offices, and then I'll hand it over to Shanda for kind of what support they can provide on the research side.
Yeah. So like Jen said, you as a staffer know that ideas come from everywhere. And we will engage with you at every part of that process. So a lot of times it is, is this even a problem in the state of Michigan? And when you bring that to us, we might be behind the scenes engaging with legal division for you. So, is this, where in the statute is this, issue presented? And then we will either, kind of take a specific pointed question that you've asked and provide that research on it, or more likely we'll provide that and it will result in a conversation. So we'll give you something that just answers that one question that you were asking, but it might bring up 5 more questions. And when we tackle a research problem, we're trying to kind of foresee those other things for you. So if you've asked about this one thing, okay, we'll answer that, but it might bring up 5 other things that you hadn't considered when you're doing your policy crafting. And so we try to see that, we try to cover those bases, but we're not perfect. So, or we might not be able to foresee where you're taking something, and that might bring other, questions. So you put another research request in. And at some point, typically it'll either give you enough information that you can decide with your boss whether or not you want to actually submit a bill request, or we can engage the drafting attorney on that the whole way. And then I can throw it back over to Kevin. But again, our staff will, even after a bill has been introduced, and if you need to prepare for committee or you need additional information on a bill as you have it in the works, or you're looking for language from other states, we can help support you in that process as well. But Kevin can talk more about once it actually gets to that bill stage.
Sure. Basically, it depends on the bill request. A lot of times, some are really fleshed out, and some you've talked to your boss. They've went to research. You've talked to your policy staff. You have everything sort of. I have everything lined up. Some are, I'm sitting in a room with a member, and a member decides to write a bill request on the back of a receipt. This actually happened to me. So, I mean, this is at that stage, generally we will advise you to, we will assist you as much as we can, but we will advise you to get out that outside help as well. So on policy decisions, obviously go to each house has their policy staff or caucus staff. They're very helpful, at least in sort of fleshing out those, what is the best way to approach this project? What is going to work best politically? Obviously my staff is not, but we do give options. As I said before, we've seen most things that come along, and we're sort of the end line where, okay, you've kind of decided what route you're going to go, how you're going to take this. And we can give you the options as how it fits in the law, what the law says, and sort of work through the process, work through as it moves through the legislature, working with that constituent or the policy staff on trying to craft your best policy.
And I actually have a good example, I guess, of what research that came to mind from like a question to all things considered standpoint. So one that we see fairly frequently is you might want to add something to the bottle law. And I think this is one that gets brought up all the time. Michigan is one of the few states that has the bottle deposit, and a pretty pricey bottle deposit, as is evidenced by the Seinfeld episode, if you've all seen that, where they try to bring in pop cans from other states. But we get that question pretty frequently. What would we need to do in order to add water bottles to the bottle deposit law? What would we need to do to add even like those new aluminum cups, for example? So we can help you by giving you the background of how we even got to where we are in the bottle law. And that includes recycling background, but also how that's been implemented. So we can give you background on what actually happens when those bottles are recycled, the different interest groups that might care about that. Where do you actually take those bottles in? You take them to Meijer, you take them to convenience stores. And they're the ones that are dealing with that. There's a lot of infrastructure around that. So we can help you walk through all of the different things that you might have to consider when you're making those changes, and the different groups that you need to talk to as well. Our shop is good at doing that. And I think that's just a good example of a scenario where we often help noodle everything out.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, Jennifer, LSB is only one of the divisions of the broader Legislative Council. Is that correct? And there are some other divisions that you have that might be of interest to the staff and our audience on the webinar today.
Sure. We do have, LSB is kind of the main agency, but we do have the two other main components. We have a handful of committees, JCAR, and others, but the most work with member offices we do by and large would be into our Corrections Ombudsman Office or Veterans Ombudsman Office. A lot of the times I did constituent work in the legislature, and I would get a phone call in an issue, and I would hopefully find someone that could help me and kind of get me the answers faster than me, hopping online and trying to find it myself. As Shanna mentioned with the bottle law, you can save a lot of time by reaching out to research and saying, hey, what do you have on this? I need something to close a business today. Or reaching out to legal and saying, my boss is talking about the statutory language. What can you get me? Can you help me walk through it? Similarly, our ombudsman offices, you have a member or a constituent in the district who has maybe somebody incarcerated or a loved one, constituent, et cetera, and has questions or something going on in the prison system. We have a team of about 9 staff that will dive into that issue. Again, they are nonpartisan, completely confidential. They will work directly with the department and get some more information going on. So a lot of the times those complaints into the Corrections Ombudsman Office are related to medical issues, constitutional questions, property concerns, things like that. And maybe your boss wants to get more information and then respond to the constituent, or maybe your boss wants to visit the prison that's in their district. We can help. The Corrections Ombudsman Office can also facilitate that visit with the department as well, and kind of work collaboratively with them and hopefully get some answers for your constituents and for your boss. The other Ombudsman Office came about after some problems at the Grand Rapids Veterans Home. We currently have two veterans homes, or two of the main veterans homes were Marquette and Grand Rapids. Those have now expanded into Chesterfield and continue to expand with some changes to the law. That office also does the same thing. So let's say you have a veterans question or an issue about someone who's staying in the home, or maybe that's your district, maybe that's your backyard, can also help do the investigation and do some of the research on those issues that might be presented to your office as a constituent question or a constituent concern. I think that's probably the largest piece. If, as Kevin mentioned, if you don't remember anything else from this Zoom, please call us and ask. If you call Shanda's group and say, I want to put in a bill request, they're going to get you to Kevin's group. If you call Kevin's group and say, I'm looking for that corrections guy that Jen mentioned on that call, I don't know, we're going to get you to where you need to be. Just reach out and pick up the phone and call. There are no dumb questions. There are usually things we haven't seen before, and maybe we haven't seen before, but let's figure it out. We want to be an extension of your office. And again, nonpartisan, confidential. We can't tell anybody what crazy question you call and ask with, period. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize that, having called and asked some crazy questions over the course of my own legislative career, I've always found the services at the Legislative Council and LSB to be a great assistance in the work of a staffer, especially one that's working on, it doesn't matter whether it's constituent issues or committee issues, or an idea that, you're the person you're working with comes back from constituent meetings and say, I heard this, what's the law on that? What can we do to further strengthen it, or whatever needs to be done to it? So LSB and the Legislative Council should be thought of as an extension of the resources that you have, much like the fiscal agencies are thought of in that manner too. So Michigan has, in my experience, some of the best resources such as that out of the office right there for you. You don't have to always contact somebody from a consultancy or a so-called think tank or whatever. The resources are right there at your own fingertips, and nonpartisan, confidential, without a viewpoint, without an agenda, just right there. So anything else either three of you would like to add? We're running a little bit early, and that's okay. But if there's anything else any of you would like to add, now's the time to do so. I don't see any questions. Of course, we're open for questions in the Q&A box. So Jennifer, anything else from you or your team today?
Not for me, just we look forward to serving you all. And if there's anything we can do to help you facilitate any goals in your office, please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, no stupid questions, call, email, my source, all sorts of ways to get a hold of us. And we're eager to serve you and make your jobs and life easier as you serve your members.
Great, great. Well, thanks for being with us here today. Greatly appreciate it. I know that early on in our session, folks, Dr. Grossman noted that we like to do a roundtable, and we've got some time now. So before our 11 o'clock, if you'd like to step away and take a break, that's fine. But I think what I'm going to do is call on folks from the participant list, from the attendee list. And if you would tell us about where you work and some of the issue interests you may have, that'd be great. So I'm just going to go down my list here and hopefully pronounce names correctly. If I don't, I apologize right off the bat. But Arika Smith. Arika, are you still here with us? How about Andrea Robinson?
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you ask that question again?
Yeah, Andrea, just take a moment to introduce yourself, the office you work in, and an area of interest.
Okay. I'm with the Office of State Senator Sylvia Santana. I am in charge of constituent issues, resolution, and I just like working in the community. So that's where I'll stay for a while.
Great. Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Angela, are you available to introduce yourself? I have an Angela and an Angela DeMoss. Either Angela available. How about Ben Dawson?
Hey, my name is Ben Dawson. I work with the Senate Fiscal Agency. I help staff the subcommittee on environment, Great Lakes, energy, and natural resources. So that's kind of my hub. I get to do lots of work with LSB, so always appreciate you guys, good partners, and helping get the budget passed and amendments and making sure things are legally sound and make sense to the public. So glad to be here. Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks, thanks, Ben. Appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
Blake Glynn. Blake.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Yeah.
I'm a legislative aide for Senator Tom Barrett. So helping out specifically with Judiciary Committee and constituent issues as well. So really looking forward to being here with all of you. Michigan State grad too, so it's always good to see us putting on stuff like this.
Great. Thanks, Blake. Go green.
Go White.
You didn't notice Kevin and I's face kind of got a little sideways on that one, but.
How about Camden Smith? Camden, are you there? Connor Loftus?
Yeah, I'm with the Office of Representative Kimbenzi, and I do her constituent services and My areas of interest personally are natural resources and veterans issues.
Super. Thanks for being with us. Thanks, Teresa. Glad to have you with us. Next is Devin Dudley. Devin?
Hi, yes, I'm from the office of Scott Van Single. I do constituent services and I just came to learn in general.
Super. Well, thanks for being with us today. Donnie. Hey, Donnie, just one name. Donnie?
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Hi, I'm Donnie. I'm the session journal clerk in the Senate for the Secretary of the Senate.
Thanks for being here today, Donnie.
Yep. Mhm.
Doug Simon? How about E. Fry? F-R-E-Y.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, you?
Good. What's your full name?
Eric Fry.
And where do you work, Eric?
I work in Representative Tisdale's office.
Great. Thanks for being here today. Hope you're getting something out of this.
Yes, sir.
Super. Elena Leonas. Elena Leonas. Elizabeth Crenshaw.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Crenshaw. I'm also a Michigan State grad, fellow Spartan, so always good to see more Spartans in the house. So hello to everybody. I'm from the office of Senator Ollier, and I focus on constituent issues as well as communications. I'm here to learn and grow, and I'm just so thankful for what I'm learning so far. So thank you so much.
Super. Elena, I see that I had not unmuted you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I am Eleni Leonis. I am with the Senate Fiscal Agency. It is quite literally my 5th day on the job. So this is my first staff training. And I'm really getting a lot out of it because I don't know a lot of stuff at all. So thank you guys for giving all of this information.
Super. Congratulations and good luck.
Thanks.
Elizabeth Crenshaw?
I just went, but I can go again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, it's okay.
How about Emily Eggenberger? Emma Method? Greg Hull? Let's see. Kevin Shropshire? Kevin, are you there?
Hello, I'm Kevin Shropshire. I'm with Representative Stephanie A. Young, and I think our interests are. She's working on some consumer bills and senior issues.
Super. Thanks for taking a moment to introduce yourself.
Hi there.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, sorry I missed you. I was on the phone and I came back and you were.
Okay.
What was the question?
Go ahead and introduce yourself, whose office you work for, and issues of interest.
Oh, sure. So I'm Greg Hall. I work for Democratic Central Staff. I am the director of the Member Services Department. So we help all of our Democratic offices with their constituent outreach.
Thanks. Kevin Balfour?
Hi, I'm from Senator Stamas's office. I handle constituent casework and policy responses. And a few of the things I'm pretty interested in are veterans affairs and local government, things like that.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Let's see who. Lisa. Is there a Lisa
Thank you. I'm Lisa Curtis with the House Business Office, and I'm helping coordinate training with MSU and welcome suggestions you guys have for future trainings. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate your partnership and all your work to help make this successful. How about Mark Meyer? Mark Meyer, the office of Mike Shirkey, Senate Majority Leader. Mimi Hunter, are you there? How about Mindy Fernandez?
Hi, this is Mindy Fernandez, and I work for State Representative John Roth. And I've been really appreciative of everything LSB is doing. And I just wanted to say that we've used him to come in with stakeholders instead of being the go-between and sending emails back and forth, and just having them meet with our stakeholders, and they've been great. So I wanted to do a shout out for them. But thank you for putting these on. We really appreciate it.
Super. Thanks for being here and taking time. How about Ms. Alicia?
Hi, my name is Alicia George. I am the Director of Constituents for Representative Stephanie Young, House District 8. And as my colleague Kevin said, her interest is consumer protection and the seniors. Thank you for having us.
Super. Thanks for being here. How about Rajan Varman?
Hi, I'm Roger Vermon. I'm a community engagement outreach intern for the Office of State Senator Secretary. I help handle constituent concerns as well as community efforts within district.
And the Office of Representative Rodney Wakeman?
Hi, this is Samantha Gibson. I'm Rep. Wakeman's Legislative Director. I also want to say LSB has been super helpful. I just started in my new role in October. So between research requests and the drafting process, I've been really appreciative of their help. As far as interests go, my boss is the chair of Families, Children, and Seniors, which is of great interest to me. We just passed an 8-bill package in 2020 to reform childcare in Michigan. So that was really fulfilling to be a part of. And thank you for this session today. It's been very helpful.
It was someone from I just got called on. That's why we're in this group text or this group
Lisa?
webinar. And I got called on. Doug got called on. Doug didn't answer because I was at a meeting. And then
there we go. We muted Lisa. Let's see. Senator Outman's office.
Yeah, hi, I'm Connie Russell. I was here to listen to the ARPA discussion. We work on the DHHS budget.
Great. What'd you think of that?
It was great. John did a great job.
Good. Good to hear. Thank you. Sydney Brown.
Hello, I'm Sydney Brown. I am a fiscal analyst for the House Fiscal Agency. I also work on the DHHS budget, particularly with child welfare, juvenile justice, and community services.
Thank you. I see we have folks from the Secretary of the Senate's office. T. Collins? Or Travis Howell? Okay, did I miss anyone? Please jump in.
Oh, hi, this is Dave from Senator Bison's office. I just wanted to say hi to everyone on here. I've worked with all the people that are over here on this thing, and I just want to say hi and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you very much. Well, I think now that we've done that, whoop, Naomi Barber. let's see here. See if we can get you to talk here, Naomi. Okay. Naomi, you should be able to say hello now.
Is it working now? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm a legislative intern for Representative Sarah Anthony's office, and this is just another staff training that was recommended for me to take, and I've definitely learned a lot.
Super. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. We're going to take I see our next speaker is here, Jamie Hutchinson. Well, we'll take let's say a 10-minute break as we planned until 11 o'clock, when we'll hear from Jamie Hutchinson, who will be speaking. Jamie is with MSU Extension and will be talking to us about working in a hybrid environment, which after a couple of years of doing so, I'm sure we'll hear some new things from Jamie, who has corrected me and said she's with MSU Work Life. Thank you very much, Jamie. I appreciate that. So let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 11 with Jamie. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and team, Sandra and Shonda, I'm sorry, and Kevin. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
There, Arnold. I was asked to hop out a little early to do a tech check.
Yep.
So let's see, we're in Zoom. So am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to share your screen.
Great. Thanks for having me today.
I appreciate you taking time.
Nope, it switched my screens around here. It does this sometimes. Workplace assistance is an area that we work with employers and employees about, and that is helping them navigate all of the things. So when we think about flexible work, for example, flexible work is something our office has done since 1993 and before, I guess, even working on flexible work arrangements. So it is something that we worked on for a long time. And of course, COVID came and it really changed a lot of what we do in the work-life world. My colleague, Nancy Kostikian from Harvard University, the director of the work-life office there, had said 6 months before COVID, gosh, if only we had a pandemic, we could put all of these flexible work initiatives and childcare supports into the forefront. We'd have a test case. I don't think she knew how seriously that was going to be taken about 6 months later, but it definitely caused a lot of universities and a lot of employers to pivot on how we worked with one another. So my hope today is talking about the next for now normal. And the reason that I made the title The Next for Now Normal is because things are still in serious changes are happening, right? We're still in flux in many ways. So I'll touch on a couple of things. And if you have questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A box or the chat, whichever is preferred for this format. And I'll make sure to address them if I can. So COVID-19 and remote work. Which of these two is in the foreground and which is in the background? We know that we're coping with both simultaneously. One layer is the news, right? What's happening in the news? What are the infection rates? What businesses are opening and closing? Who's coming back to the office? Who's working remotely? Who prefers a hybrid environment, right? So what about the business we need to do in this context? Both are really vying for our attention and priorities. We know that prior to COVID, approximately 30% of employed Americans stated they had more stress than they could handle. Last June, that number was 60% of employees, and I imagine it has even gone up since then. So we know that every single one of you, whether you're a supervisor, whether you're an employee, whether you're working with interns or paid employees, we're all navigating all the things. So let's talk about that. Sometimes when we talk about remote work, in the history of remote work, we have some supervisors that say, well, what about the employees that's just going to put their feet up and watch Netflix? Or what about the employee who I won't be able to see them, so I don't know if they're doing their job? So I wanted to talk about that because it's one of the top questions that comes up when we talk about best practices for flexible work arrangements, including remote and hybrid work environments. So the first thing with any employee is to make the expectations, assignments, deadlines, and tasks really clear, and often in writing. So I myself have done some experiments prior to COVID. So my spouse was in a conference in Florida, and I asked my boss, can I go and work from Florida for the week? And so we talked about what it was I was going to get done, what hours I was going to be available, etc. So I made a list of things that she would know I had achieved in that week, and a number of appointments that I would still be meeting with remotely, and talk about what deadlines I had coming up and what might be changed due to that week away. So that's one example of how you can work with each other and make sure that you know what the expectations are. Whether I'm in the office where you can see me or at home, there's always a possibility that I might not be focused on my work. But more times than not, we have very dedicated and loyal employees that are working really hard, probably even more than the 40-hour work week. So if you know what the expectations are and you discuss and agree upon that with employee and supervisor, it'll help clarify things. So is the work getting done? Not where is the work getting done, and not what time is the work getting done, but is it getting done? Another best practice is to have regularly scheduled brief update calls as often as you need for your team. So as an employee, you can give this example to your supervisor. As a supervisor, you can put these into action. So let's say, for example, every day at noon, you're going to be available for 15 minutes, or every day at 4 o'clock, or maybe just twice a week, or only Tuesday mornings, whatever works with your schedule. The reason that these are recommended is because when we aren't working together in person, we do miss some of the regular water cooler conversations. You know, who are you rooting for in the Super Bowl? Did you see what happened in the legislature in Kentucky? Whatever it is that you sit around the water cooler and talk about, we don't have those same kind of interactions. So having some regularly scheduled brief update calls allows people to ask those questions that they might just swing by your office and ask when we're in person. Or to do some team building. We know when we know more about one another, we have more trust, and that sets us up to be more creative and more productive. We always have to look at what did we do before COVID in this case, and what things can be put on the back burner, right? So if there's reduced tasks that somebody can't do, you can use professional development via whatever forms you have. We use what's called Elevate You through our human resources. And we can go and get those tasks. If someone can't fulfill their tasks at home, but they need to work full-time still, it's a good time for professional development. You can also identify courses consistent with unit goals, agree on those courses, and set deadlines and seek evidence of completion. So one site that anybody can use, so if you have an employee who in person would be really busy, but they're not in person in the moment, so they need some more things that they could do, you could use things like Coursera. I took a course through Coursera, which is called The Science of Wellbeing, and it's taught by a Yale professor, and it's a free course. So there's lots of topics in Coursera that people can take if they need some professional development and some self-paced work. And of course, for those that have way more to do, I have friends that work at the state, work at the legislature, work at Michigan State, and some of them, depending on their jobs, have gotten an increased workload. Considering what we work on at the Work-Life Office, we have had increased workload because of flexible work, remote work, hybrid work, caregiving demands and duties, childcare issues, all of those things. So we've become more busy. And we've also know that right now we're facing the Great Resignation, what they're calling it. So a lot of people may be leaving their positions for new positions, or leaving their positions to have more quality time with their family. So in the legislature, I know hours can be very long. So if you're seeing folks leave, then you know that you have some staff left that are doing more with less resources. So I've been doing all 4 jobs in the work-life office since July. And then since March, I've been doing 3 of those. So since March, we've had staff down. We had a hiring freeze. I'm happy to say I was just able to hire 2 people to start in January. So I'm feeling more support, but I know what that feels like, doing more with less, having more demands. So we might need to reorder our priorities. Maybe we used to do an event, or we used to host some trainings that aren't on the top of the priority list right now. That's okay. We know that there are different stressors on people, and we're doing more with less. So sometimes it's important to reorder those priorities in a workforce if demands are higher than normal. We often hear that employees are having trouble maintaining focus. So if people are shifting to working from home and they've not done so, so I am in my home office here in Okemos, Michigan. I'm not on campus today. I do a hybrid work environment, 3 days on campus and 2 days at home. So one thing that I have is this private space. I'm also a private practice counselor 1 evening a week. So I have a second job. So I have a confidential setting where I can shut the door. I have 2 screens to do my work. I have, all the supplies that I need, but not everybody does who works from home. And so we have some suggestions to help provide some structure for focus. One is, for some people, they might need to make a distraction-free space. So right before I came onto this presentation, my yellow lab was barking her head off at people across the window. That's something about being at home. So I know I can shut the door and close the blinds. So I have more privacy. And so hopefully you all don't get to meet Leia today as she barks on the phone. So maybe they have a 1-bedroom apartment, and making a distraction-free zone could be a corner of a room with a trifold display board so that you have some privacy. It could be simple and inexpensive. Time gets really fluid when we're working from home or working a hybrid schedule. What day is it? Who am I? Where am I? Right? So setting a timer to take regular breaks is really important. The MSU Work-Life Office spent about 1.5 years developing a well-being at work guide that talks about all of the areas that we need to focus on to have a well workplace. Taking breaks is really, really important. Some of us think I'm just going to work through lunch and I'm going to get more done. But actually, if you take time away to eat your lunch or even a 15-minute walk, you'll be more refreshed because you took a break. You'll be more focused because you took a break. It allows that part of our brain to relax and take a break. So setting a timer for breaks is important. Sometimes when we work from home, we start to forget, when am I home? When am I at work? Those things are really natural and normal. And then schedule a time to do home things and limit it to that. So right now I have probably 4 loads of laundry that I could be getting done, but I can make a couple of choices. I can take my lunch hour to go throw a load of laundry in, or maybe take a 15-minute break somewhere to flip laundry, but I need to make sure that I am scheduling those things into my day so I don't become distracted with home issues while I'm on work time. I think flexible schedules are really important too right now for a lot of people, particularly people that have littles at home or senior parents or senior elders that they're taking care of. So private space is going to be really important. Sometimes you might tell the other people in your home. So for 20 months, I was working home with my spouse. My teen was school at home. My dog, Princess Leia Luna, and my mother-in-law lives here 6 months out of the year. And so I had a 3-generation household. So we needed to have signals. At the time, my spouse was working in this office and I was working in the living room, and my daughter was working in the guest room upstairs, and my mother-in-law was hanging out in the lower level, right? So if I'm in the living room, people walk in, ask me questions, and I could be in the middle of an email, or I could be in the middle of trying to get something done. So I communicated with them, hey, if I have this lamp on, please, that's a do not disturb, or just maybe say to me, Jamie, do you have a minute? Because if people start talking to me while I'm typing, I'm going to miss half of what they're saying. So it's important to have those conversations if you're sharing space with folks. Really, it's important if you have those conversations in the office too. A lot of us share space, have cubicles, and it's important to kind of know when the light is on or the light is off. But really, beyond these tips of things to consider, it's critical that the employee has to structure themselves because they know themselves best. They know exactly what works for them. So I see a question in the Q&A, so I'm going to take a moment to read that and address it. What best practices do you have for employees who work in a position where more than 70% of your work can be done at home, but you have to navigate an organizational culture or leadership team who may not be comfortable with working from home? Even after COVID, with the work having gotten done remotely for a year, how to advocate for work from home flexibility with class and respect, asking for a friend. Well, thank you, Anonymous. I get these questions literally every day from our 13,000 employees. There's really a lot of ways you can go about that. The first is to have transparent conversations with your supervisor. What we recommend is that employees put together a flexible work arrangement proposal, that they go through and look at how will what I'm proposing affect myself? How will it affect my colleagues? How will that affect my supervisor? And really take time to write those out. We have a lot of examples on our website. I'll make sure to include our flex work planning in a follow-up to this presentation. But then you make a plan and you say, I'm going to work from home 3 days a week. I'll be in the office 2 days a week. I personally work from home Tuesdays and Fridays, so I'm at home today. However, my work comes first. So if we had a training on Friday, I would be in the office today. If I had an employee that needed to make an in-person appointment, I would be in the office today. If we had a meeting that was scheduled with one of our senior leaders, I would be in the office today. So although I work from home Tuesdays and Fridays, I have in my proposal that if the work needs call for that, I can come in for in-person meetings when needed. So it really does make for flexibility on the employee and an employer's part to make it work. I think looking at the best practices in working from home is really important, and also making sure that you don't say this is forever. We suggest people do a 30-day trial with their new schedule, and they check in with each other, the supervisor and the employee, to see how things are going. Is the work getting done? Are things being missed? Is there a lack of cohesion in the office with the person gone, or have they been able to work successfully with Zoom or Teams or Google Meet meetings? So think about those kind of things. And then I recommend after 30 days that you do 90 days and 6 months. So we know the needs of the workplace are really changing rapidly. So we should be reviewing those plans and agreements ahead of time. Hopefully that gives you just a few ideas, and we might hit some more here in a minute. Thank you for the question. So we do have a mass of new information coming our way and ways of interacting. At Michigan State University, we've had like work from home, come into the office, work from home if you can. If you're student or faculty facing, you have to be in the office. We have a mask mandate. We have a mandate for vaccine and boosters. And that's a lot to keep track of. What are we doing? How do we do it? How do we onboard new people when we were at home for part of the month in January? How do we come into the office when needed? So really thinking about setting new norms and structures, setting good boundaries. And I think establishing priorities has been really critical for a lot of teams. So how can we talk about the end in mind? So let's say you have a big project due. How can you get this work done? How can you stay on top of information that's coming at you from your employer that has to do with changes? Not only do I navigate MSU's changes, but also the state of Michigan changes and some of our partners changes. It's a lot to navigate. Transparent and regular information is really key. In thinking first to understand where that individual is coming from and think about win-win scenarios. So this is from 7 Habits, right? Stephen Covey. And they are things that really help us put ourselves into the other person's shoes. We always look for win-win scenarios. I can tell you right now, if you look at national data, 70 to 90% of employees will not even consider a new position unless it has flexible or remote options, right? So people have loved working from home, a lot of them, or at least wanting flexibility. So for me, on Fridays, I have Girl Scout meeting. I have 11 girls in my troop right after work. So working from home gets rid of that half-hour commute and allows me to be there for my scouts, and it doesn't take any time away from my work. So it's a win-win for me personally, and also professionally, I'm able to work and get my job done. So win-wins are really important, and having a flexible work support in any employment culture is becoming more and more crucial. And I'm happy to talk to folks more about any of these issues. I know we're just touching on things today. Sometimes people get overwhelmed with all of the chats and okay, I get a text message and then I get a chat on Teams and then I get an email and where is everything, right? So we recommend to keep face-to-face connection an option. Again, that could be Zoom daily office hours from 8 to 9 so anyone can connect with you. It's really important to have a weekly meeting to connect with people that you supervise or collaborate with so that you're still staying in touch. So I have a staff meeting that I run on Tuesdays and an intern meeting that we run on alternate Thursdays and Fridays. So once a week, I'm touching base with all the folks on our team. So we have about 12 or 13 folks, so it's a smaller team. If you have a large team, you might need to break it up into different meetings. But it's really important to continue to connect so that we are keeping on the same page. Finally, it's important to list your contacts. How are you available? Is it via Zoom? Is it email? Is it face-to-face? Are you out of the office? So people do know when they reach out to you what they can expect. And then I think having your calendar up to date and sharing that calendar with people is really important. So my staff could look right now and see that I'm in a presentation until 11:30. And so I'm not going to be available to answer any of their questions at this time. And even I have my personal things on my calendar, I can mark them private, but if someone had an emergency, they know to text me. So we've talked with our office mates. If you send me a Zoom or a Teams message or an email, you don't expect me to return it until my next working hours. If something crucial comes up, you'll text me and then I'll know that I need to attend to that. That way I won't be focusing on all the bings from my team and bings from my email, because I know you all know we can easily run our lives from our cell phones. So updating your calendars and sharing calendar, even if it's only sharing available or unavailable, it'll really help to clarify when you are available to meet with people, whether that's a collaborator, your supervisor, someone you supervise, etc. Change is hard. So I mentioned I'm a licensed counselor, a therapist, and I do that work once a week. At Michigan State University, I do not do therapy, but I do a lot of work on workplace well-being. And we know that stress is up for many of our colleagues, particularly parents. Caregiving falls more to women and even more so to women of color. So even if we're all in the same storm, this COVID-19 storm, we have different boats. We have different sets of supports. We have different sets of things that we just don't talk about at work. So I'd like to briefly go over some ways that you can be navigating some of those things with the folks that you work with. We know that change is hard, period. Our brains really didn't know what to expect anymore during part of COVID. Every single part of people's schedules has changed. When they were working from home, they changed their commute time, they changed their shower schedule. Actually, showers were the one thing that had the least amount of change. They changed their childcare pickup, their volunteer activities, their campaigning, whatever it is they're working on, everything changed. And that's hard, and it's hard for our brains. So we were tired. We have what's called decision-making fatigue. For example, do I sanitize my groceries? Do I get meal delivery? I want to support local businesses. Do I feel safe eating in there, or do I need to have a mask? Do I need to get to go? If I get to go, do I need to sanitize it? And on and on and on. Things we never had to think about before that we do have to think about now. So unanticipated change that we've gone through is harder than when we know there's a structural change coming, a new leader, etc. A lot of folks have suffered grief and loss, perhaps tangible grief and loss, such as losing someone to COVID, or the grief and loss of the old normal. We used to like to go out and on game days, go hang out with some of our friends and watch the game and get some pizza, at a local establishment. That's gone, right? We weren't doing that for a long time. We can grieve those things. Volunteering, seeing our family, changes in the way we are. And for many employees felt isolated if they lived alone or lived in a non-supportive environment. Working from home was hard. So we have to think about that. Some employees loved and thrived working from home, and others were like, let me get back in the office. Neither of those things are wrong, but we need to be open and flexible and listen to each other and not lead or manage from our preference, but rather have equitable decision-making. We can take the time to work with our employees to create a flexible work environment where people will stay, or we can create an environment where we're running from our own preferences, and then we'll do turnover and conflict resolution. So either way you work towards prevention and workplace well-being or towards conflict resolution, you're going to be spending the time, right? A lot of people are sad and scared or put life on they know it as hold. And then many people got back some feelings of normalcy, maybe after the vaccine. And then after that, new variant, right? So we've all been on a roller coaster together. Aside from just checking in with your teams, it's nice to just have a chat and see how people are doing. It can be really helpful for people that may be feeling isolated. Trust is built through getting to know each other beyond work. So if I asked you all what your favorite food was and you popped it in the chat, I bet we'd find some things in common. You'd find the salad lovers versus the pizza lovers, right? By the way, pizza wins every time. Yes, thank you, Ben. Pizza 100%. That's getting to know something about our colleagues. Maybe I'm hosting a luncheon. I just found out that my brand new employee loves Mediterranean food. Now that I know that, and I'm going to host a lunch at work, I can bring in Mediterranean food. I get to know her. I get to know what her preferences are. And that allows us to build some trust beyond work. So having a time to connect and share icebreakers and information, some people feel like that's a waste of time. I'm too busy for that. But the truth is that will save time because you'll have stronger connections and be able to address things more directly in the future. Isolation's huge. We want to find out what people's best mode of communication is and connect. If you have a really large team, think about doing smaller group meetings. Try to listen with an open heart and open mind, meaning come to the conversation willing to learn from the other people you work with on what they need. Ensure that your openness to hear from them is evident. So having those open office hours and reliably maintaining them allows people to depend on you. And of course, even if someone says, I don't want to come to the coffee talk, I'm too busy, invite them every time to show you're thinking about them and they're welcome. And then provide frequent references to resources like if you have an EAP program or a counseling program, to your human resources folks, to people that do work-life work, or how to find counseling services outside of work. The truth is, and Maya Angelou has a great quote that says, if we don't work, nothing else will. If my physical and mental health are not attended to, I can't be a good employee. I can't be a good supervisor. I also can't be a good mom or spouse or child of 3 aging parents, right? So it's really important that people know how to seek out that help and that we destigmatize mental health treatment and destigmatize physical health treatment, because in the end, me being a full healthy person is going to allow me to do my best. If you think other people around you might be struggling, it's important to note that. If you find they have difficulty in finding words, reduced eye contact, if they say, I'm fine, but their words don't match their expression or they seem distracted, have changes in behavior or more irritated, check in on them. When we have physical health issues, if I came in limping, you would ask me what I did. How did I hurt myself? If I come in unshowered and I'm not myself, please also ask me if I'm okay. Don't have to have all the answers, but knowing where to send people is truly important. Take care of yourself, because without taking care of yourself, you really can't be there for anybody else. And we don't have all the answers yet, but if we can share compassion and flexibility more than ever and have grace for ourselves and others, that goes a long way. Finally, on equitable decision-making, it's important to talk about that the work gets done, not where it gets done or what time it gets done, but does the work get done? If the impact of the work being flexible is neutral or positive, why not be flexible? Decision-making, there's a lot of multiple means to the same end. And if a task can be done in more than one way, why not do the task in that way? So I know I ran through those last few slides pretty quick because we're right at 2 minutes left. So I want to say thank you to everybody for investing in workplace well-being. If I can be of further assistance to you or your team or anyone else you know, please feel free to visit the Work Life. We have a lot of recorded webinars, articles, best practices, and then I have a whole bunch of information on flex work providers or flex work information that I can provide with Arnold, who can share with the group as well. So thank you so much for inviting me today, and let me know if I can be of further assistance.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for your presentation. I think as you've noted, the workplace and the relationship between employee and employer is ever evolving now, pushed along certainly by the impacts of the pandemic. Hybrid work, remote work, work from home. As we noted in the question from one of our attendees, still a lot of push and pull there between employers and employees. And so your information is greatly appreciated. I see a lot of thank yous coming into the chat. So we still know that these are prevalent issues. And I want folks to know that, Jamie's presentation will be available and will be emailed to you. And Jamie and others are out there for you. And I'm sure that although we brought Jamie over here from MSU, that the legislature also has resources available to you as well. But don't hesitate to seek them out as we together continue this journey of the changing workplace, the great resignation, the great reshuffling, the great switching, and the changes that have come to the workplace that are, as you noted, Jamie, I think going to be with us for quite some time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your time together.
Great. Well, next on our agenda are a couple of brief presentations. The first one from Alan Wright, who's the Executive Director of Information Services with the Legislative Service Bureau. He was mentioned briefly in the presentation by Jennifer. So Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Arnold. I'm here today just to talk a little bit about the communication services that we offer through the Legislative Service Bureau. Just to kind of start things off, how you get in touch with us, we have 3 different ways. First of all, of course, we're a telecommunications firm, so we have a telephone number of 517-373-5555. If you're at your desk phone, that's just 3555. We also take requests through email, helpdesk@legislature.mi.gov. And also through the MySource webpage that I think a couple of my colleagues talked about earlier. And I'll show you how to do the phone stuff through that real quick here at towards the end of my presentation. But that's mysource.legislature.mi.gov. It's a secure website. We also have for phone orders, but we also have things like frequently asked questions and the user guides for all the telephones that are currently in service in the legislature. So as the phone provider for the legislature, there's quite a few things that we do. We move, place, and program any desk phones. So if you have speed dial numbers that you'd like to have set up, or call appearances, or just have your buttons rearranged, we can take care of that for you. During the pandemic, we found out that people need their phones forwarded just about everywhere. We can forward your office lines to a district office. We can forward the main line to staff phones, maybe the front to the back deskers. And we can also forward to cell phones. So that you can always stay in touch with your constituents, even if you're not in the office. Another really popular feature that we have is the ability to forward your voicemail to email, where it actually comes as an attachment to your email as an audio file so that you can play it wherever you are. The one thing that I will caution you on that one is if your voicemail is forwarded to your email and you delete the mail message, it doesn't go back and delete the voicemail. So you do still need to dial into the voicemail system every once in a while to delete the voicemails, or your voicemail box will get full and then nobody can leave you any more messages. If it gets to the point that there's just too many to delete as well, and you've already listened to them through the voicemail system, or you've already listened to them through email, you can also give us a call and we can help you clear that out as well. So you don't have to sit there and delete 100 voicemail messages using the touchtone phones. Other services we offer, we can help you set up toll-free lines if you want to provide those to your constituents. We have all kinds of telecommunications gear. So if you want a large conference room call-in session, we can do that. We can also set up dial-in telecommunications lines. So if you're going to have a meeting with a lot of constituents or in a lot of different locations, we can set up phone lines for people to call in with pins and things like that so that only the people that are supposed to be into it gets into it. If you're using the IndyGov constituent management software that's just now beginning to roll out, we actually send the caller ID information to that to help it select the correct constituent when a call comes in. And we're also always available to consult on your telecommunications needs. It's a constantly changing world, as we've been hearing throughout a lot, especially in Jamie's presentation, that we are more than happy to help you figure out what the best telecommunications mix is for your office. Real briefly, I would like to show you our MySource page. There we go. Now, I know some of my colleagues mentioned this earlier. The one that I really wanted to highlight today is our telecommunications phone and video tab. And in this section, you can see that we have the ability to put in a new telecommunications request. And if you submit it through here, of course, you can view it and see the progress that we're making on it. You can see your billing history. And then we also have our frequently asked questions section. We'll talk about what happens if you come in and the speaker light is flashing on your phone. What if you need to make an international call? Some of the other things that we frequently get on the phone system itself. And then over in the services we provide section, we also have those user guides for all the different phones. So if you're not sure what a button does, some of them are a little cryptically written on the phones just because of the space. This will show you all the different things that we have on that one. Plus our voicemail system, quick guides to forwarding. And again, if you wanted to request any of our telecommunications services, it can be done through our telecommunications request form. Like if you needed to set up a toll-free number, schedule a video conference, schedule a conference calls, we can all do that. And down here in the lower right-hand corner, if you put your phone number in this little red box, we will call you back as well, so that you don't have to wait. Or if you have additional questions or something like that, we're happy to respond through the web page as well. I know I had 15 minutes, but I really don't have all that much information about phones. I mean, everybody's pretty much been using them for quite a long time anyways. But if anybody has any individual questions or any questions about our phone system in general, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ellen, I want to thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's a good follow-up to what Jamie had to say, because certainly a major piece of working from home or hybrid is the communications piece, and the ability for staff to be able to pick up those phone calls, pick up those emails, whether they're in the office or whether they're working from a remote place. So very important information, and I greatly appreciate what you've had to put forward here today.
Absolutely.
So stick around. You never know if we'll have a question pop in.
Will do.
But next, I'd like to introduce Maurice Houston. And for those that are a part of the Senate staff, Maurice is going to be speaking specifically to services within the House. You can stick around, of course, and listen to that, or you can have some more time back on this sunny winter's day. But Maurice is a business analyst with the Michigan House of Representatives, and he serves as a liaison for the Information Systems Department. So Maurice, go ahead and begin.
All right. Hi, everyone. Just give me 1 second. Let me pull up this presentation. All right. Just 1 second. All Sorry, I'm trying to put this in presentation mode. And
the top bar there with the little arrow.
yes, I see. It's just being blocked by Zoom.
What about on the bottom part?
You're right. Here we go.
Super.
Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Maurice, and I'm with the House Information Systems, and today I'm going to go over with you what it's like working from home, like while we course through the pandemic. Working from home, it's become something that's normal, or become more normal than it has ever been with COVID. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. So the house resources that we use at home, these are three different ones that we use quite frequently, which would be Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Teams, and the House Portal / the HouseNet. Since it's coming from the legislative that we have here, this will kind of be directly toward how using HouseNet, not so much the House Portal, because we're phasing that out, and pretty much everything you connect can be used anywhere at any given moment. So I'll be going over three main courses. Like I said, this one we're going to talk about is Microsoft Outlook. Outlook gives you the ability to check the status of a user when you're at home. Typically, when you're in office and the person you may need to contact is next to you, you could easily check their availability by walking over to them. While you're at home, that wouldn't be the case. So before giving them a call, you could check in their meeting. If so, you can check with that red icon or that green icon. The red icon typically means that you're busy or that you're in a meeting. So if you're wanting to get in contact with them, that may not happen instantly. And that's a good way to check if you are able to contact that person. If they're green and they're available, you can send them an email and it'll fire off to them. And then there's another icon that displays as yellow. It basically means that they're away from their computer, so they may have stepped out for a little bit, but they will return. If you aren't working and you have the ability, if you aren't working today and you have the ability to pre-fill a text, basically saying that you can send out an email saying, hey, I'm not going to be in from this time period to this period, and that message will display way before you send that email, or it actually send the email right after you go ahead and process it. So you also get an email before saying, hey, this person's not here, or you'll get another email right after that one saying that's not going to happen. Another tool that we use is the shared calendar, which basically has to the left of me, which kind of tells anybody that's in office and who's ever not in office. So if you want to just check in between your shared calendars, which you're able to put on Microsoft Outlook, it'll let you know who's here and who's not going to be here for that day. So if you need to get in contact with one of those leaders of that department, such as mine, I wouldn't go to a couple people that are on that list because they're not going to be working Monday or that Tuesday. One of my also favorite tools is the Access tool. Basically, with Outlook, you can go ahead and put this on your phone. You can use this on your laptop, your iPad, anywhere else that you could have. And convenience is a big thing for me. So I'm usually in the house and at my house. I'm typically not in front of my computer a lot of the time. So I'm usually always on the go. And what happens with it comes on my watch, or the notification will come on my phone. So I can easily do a quick reply if needed, or I can forward it to someone else, or I could just send a message quite frequently or get back to my computer. Working from home, I know it gets busy, especially with the background of all the things that's going on. It's kind of hard to stay in front of your desk. So, and moving on to Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is unique because you have the ability to host and join meetings from anywhere. Basically, what that means is this has the availability. If you have a quick time that you want to chat with one of your coworkers, you have that ability to just go ahead and give them a quick video call to discuss what's going on, or if you have a meeting that you need to discuss what's going on. And the cool thing about that is when you want to discuss something really quickly, the availability status comes right over from Outlook to Teams. So basically what that means is as soon as you join a meeting, it'll say that you're not available for that meeting at all. Or as soon as you come out of a meeting, it'll say that you're available. But you could also straight from Teams give the direction to say, hey, I'm going to be away, or I'm going to be a little bit busy for a bit. I have something going on. Because like I said, life happens and you probably will get busy at home. So sometimes you need to go take the dog out or make some dinner, or lunch. So that gives you the straight ability to do that right from Microsoft Teams. Something that's also neat is that your personal calendar, from anything from your personal calendar comes over to your meeting or to Microsoft Teams. So when you're planning something in Microsoft Outlook, anything that you do will transfer over to Teams. And like I said, that will change your Outlook status immediately. So like I said, if you're busy, away, or available, that will change instantly. And also something that's very neat is easily chatting with anyone inside your organization. Basically, what this means is if you need to get a quick message out or you want to get something from a quick response, you can go ahead and do that and just send them a chat, which I have that highlighted in that screenshot there. And you can send a quick chat off if you want to. And if anyone you need to talk to will probably be available. And if not, I'm sure they'll get back to you to their convenience. So we're going to dive into the House portal. So the House portal is at this point a little bit phasing out, but the one neat thing that you should probably look at is the fact that the O drive is still there. So this O drive basically means that you can access any tools from the department that you may need from your department that can be in there, so that if someone from your team goes and put something in the file explorer, that is the place to access it. Since we've been phasing out of the legislative portal, we've been using more things with Outlook. So everything that can be accessed, as long as you're logging into your employee credentials, you can access this from any point. So if you're at home, it'll look just like you were at work. So as long as you're logging into your credentials, but other than that, you are able to access time cards, your payroll, any newsletters, any new announcements that are coming up. That'll be just as it was when you were in work. It'll be the same thing as outside of work. So with that being said, I think that clears up my presentation. But anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maurice.
Yeah.
Let's see here. If you could stop your screen share, that'd be great.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There we go. Super. Yeah, very good. Obviously specific to the House, but I'm sure always good to have that kind of information and get people thinking about how they can check into their duties and their various systems within their departments while they're in the office or working from home. So appreciate both you and Alan. I don't see any questions right now. And I'll give it a minute or so to see if we have any questions. Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for that comment. But as for me, I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, presenters and attendees alike. To those attendees, remember, we'll have another morning session next Friday, where, as Matt noted, we'll have presentations on the state budget from House, Senate, and Fiscal, and hopefully the State Budget Office, as well as the MEDC on the new economic development incentives, and then another round of professional development sessions for you all. And I really do appreciate the support of the House and Senate leadership, the collaborative participation of the House and Senate business offices, our own MSU team, and all of you for taking time on this Friday morning to join us. So I guess with that, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm seeing a lot of appreciation. Thank you for you, Maurice, which is great. Certainly appreciate you taking a little time from your day to be with us today, and you as well, Alan. So thank you all. Again, look for an email from us in the next couple of days with links to the presentations and information that was made here today, as well as our evaluation. And really appreciate everyone's efforts in making this happen. Thank you all, and have a great weekend.